one thought on every Week 12 game coming up in just a second with KC Joyner, plus the matchups to watch tonight in the Eagles matchup against the Seattle Seahawks. We told you, by the way, that tweet from Jeff Mosher inside the Birds is, basically Jeff Lurie said if the quarterback stinks, put the other guy in. He says it came from the top, which is, I applaud Lurie if he's backing Wentz to say, look, this is what bothers me about GMs. They pick a guy, and then they're tied to that guy because they picked him. They can't ever admit, I made a mistake. I would respect you more if you just said, I made a mistake, rather than continuing to play a guy who doesn't deserve to play. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I draft Marcus Smith and he stinks, I don't want to keep playing Marcus Smith. I want to say, I messed up, but I found a guy who's better than Marcus Smith, and I'm going to play that guy. I used Marcus Smith as an example because he couldn't get on the field at all. They just decided never to put him on the field. But in this situation, and Casey, I don't think the Eagles are at the point now where they have told themselves, I don't think Carson Wentz can play. But what message is there when you hear that Jalen Hurts might get more playtime tonight?
Don't throw interceptions. don't make those crazy plays. Don't try to be Brett Favre. I mean, it's sending a message to Wentz is what it would be. You're not really, you're trying to also send a message. I actually take that back. It's not just sending a message to Wentz. It's sending a message to the rest of the team, because if the rest of the team sees that the quarterback isn't, hey, he can't be benched if he plays badly. I can be benched if I play badly. If the players are around him are thinking that, but the quarterback is being treated in a way that says that he can't be benched, you can start to lose the team that way, because now they think there's a double standard, and that, I think that's as important as it is anything else, that you got to make sure the team is on board with the idea that everybody's going to be held to a standard.
Now, Jeff Mosher, who is part of our show every day, 4 o'clock football at 4, he's reporting that Eagles owner Jeffrey Lurie gave the directive to play Hurts if Wentz struggles. That this came from the top. What's the message there where the owner steps in?
If the owner thinks that there's an old saying in football that says that coaches should coach, players should play, scouts should scout, general managers should general manage. You just don't want to have any blend over between them. That you've got to keep those things separate to make sure that everybody can do the job properly. Otherwise, scouts try to be coaches, players try to be coaches try to be GMs. It's not usually a good idea. Having said that, in the Eagles' case, they've been very good about that over the years. And if the owner is coming in and saying that, it says that the owner thinks, in my opinion, it says that the owner thinks, hey, you're not doing the job that you're supposed to do. Because I don't think that Jeffrey Lurie is the type of person that's going to come in and micromanage things. But if he thinks that something isn't being done that he thinks is pretty obvious and needs to be done, that's when he would come in and say that. So it's a very bad sign for Peterson if that's the case.
Well, a lot of bad signs for Peterson because the team's not playing very well, and this matchup doesn't help. When you look at the Eagles' offensive line, they're going to move Peters to guard. Lane Johnson is out. You're going to have Mailata playing left tackle. It's the 10th different offensive line configuration. So what does that mean in this matchup tonight against Seattle, who has struggled this year, obviously, with the pass rush?
They're not a very good pass-rushing team, so you would hope that you would be able to hold up. But the thing is that maybe you can hold up physically, but can you hold up mentally? Can everybody be able to do the type of blocking they're supposed to do? It also worries me, though, a lot in the running game, because the running game takes a lot of coordination. And of late, the Eagles had started to do more things with their blocking schemes than they had in the past. They were doing a lot of quick traps, long traps, wham traps, a number of different types of plays, though they hadn't been doing as much earlier in the year, and it takes a lot of coordination to do those. I mean, you get these players moving around as much as they are, it makes it that much more difficult. You have to end up running zone schemes a lot more frequently, and those are just, they'll work, but they can't give you the kind of impact that you can if you can really tailor your running attack. So I think the running game is going to suffer.
Well, the running game is something that they actually have done pretty well this year, so we'll see if Doug kind of leans on that, or does he go to Carson Wentz, or does he turn to Jalen Hurts as the drama continues to unfold here in Philly. What about throwing the football? Seattle's defense, we know, has a lot of soft spots in it. So is this the right game to get Carson Wentz back on the right track?
You'd think so, but the Seahawks over the past 4 games have allowed fewer than 300 net passing yards in 3 of those games. One of the games they allowed 299, but still, they're not the sieve that they were earlier in the year. Like in the first 3 games of the season, they were allowing nearly over 400 yards per game, and they had a couple of the games like that as well. And over the last 2 games against the Rams and the Cardinals, fairly solid offenses, they've allowed a total of 44 points the Seahawks defense has. So I think they've been able to plug up some of their coverage holes. They still have some weaknesses, but I don't think that this is a game where if you try and throw the football, suddenly you're trying to turn it into a shootout. I think the Eagles need to avoid a shootout scenario in this in every way possible, because I think they would lose 9 out of 10 times if they get into that type of contest.
Chris Carson's back for Seattle. What does this mean for their offense? How does the Eagles' run defense stack up?
The Eagles' run defense has stacked up well against running backs this year. Their problem has been rushing quarterbacks, and they've had issues there. If you just look at the stats they have just against running backs, the numbers have held up quite well. And I think the Seahawks, it used to be that when they would do zone reads, that Russell Wilson would run a lot on those. I've gotten the sense over the past couple of years that they don't want to have him run as much because, let's face it, he's getting a little bit older, and you don't want him to be taking unnecessary hits. So I think that they'll probably hold up fairly solidly given the way they've done well against running backs. But I also wouldn't be shocked if the Seahawks just added a couple of plays to Wilson to test the Eagles in that sense, because, say, Brandon Graham on the end, when he's been playing against zone reads, he's not been doing anywhere near as well as he should. So wouldn't be surprised to see him throw a couple of mixers in like that.
Okay, now DK Metcalf, he's a problem. Slay's a nice player. Obviously, he's done a great job this year. But the other side, Maddox, Lockett, Eagles secondary matching up with Lockett and DK Metcalf.
I actually worry a little bit about Darius Slay because he's been good this year, but if you're looking at his game logs for yards per target, he's had 3 games this year per Pro Football Reference where he's had a double-digit yards per target allowed. He had 11 yards against San Francisco, 19.8 yards against Baltimore, and 12.3 yards against the Giants. So I have a feeling they'll at least test that matchup and see, because if Slay is having an off game, now you can throw wherever you want. So I have a feeling they might test that situation as well. But, yeah, I think they'll funnel. If Slay holds up early on, they'll start funneling things in the other direction, and the other cornerbacks don't hold up nearly as well. So it's imperative for Slay to have one of his good games.
No, we asked this question earlier to Brady Henderson, who covers Seattle. We say, look, Seattle looks like a Super Bowl contender. Are they because they're beating up on the NFC East, or is this a solid football team all around that's a Super Bowl contender?
I think part of it is that they're beating up on the NFC East. I mean, they've lost 3 of their past 5 games. Arizona got them when they get in the shootout games against good offenses, they don't fare anywhere near as well. The Rams showed that you could slow their offense down, and but not only that, in 3 of the past 5 games, they've had 3 or 3+ turnovers. So they're turning the ball over a lot on offense, and I think they realize that we can't be this pass-happy team, because as much as we're putting the ball in the air, Wilson will try and take some chances. He's more of a risk taker than people think that he is. He's not a game manager type. He wants the big play, but if he's making those turnovers, that turns the whole thing around. So I think that they're going to use this stretch run when they're getting Carson back, and they've got a lot of depth at running back now. I have a feeling you're going to go back to seeing the ground and pound Seahawks. And if you start to see that and they get away from the pass-heavy stuff they did earlier this year, then I'll buy into them as a Super Bowl contender.
All right, who wins and why? We'll get that from KC Joyner coming up in just a minute. But first, let's get one thought on every game this week. Wild week again. It was bizarro stuff happened. We had a wide receiver playing quarterback all game long. But let's take a look at this one. This one's wild as well. Atlanta, 43. Vegas, 6. What's going on there? It looks like Raheem Morris might keep his job the way the Falcons are going. And then right when we wanted to believe in the Raiders.
Yeah, Raheem Morris should be keeping that job. If they keep playing this way down the stretch, he absolutely should get that job. And the Raiders, they do this every so often under Gruden. They'll have these games where they completely lay an egg. And I think it's a matter of also that they probably wore down on playing East Coast games. If you can keep them from making those big, long road trips, I think it probably helps them. But this is something that's a problem for him, because if you want to win a Super Bowl, you can't lay eggs like this every so often.
That was a total egg. 43-6 Atlanta beats Vegas. The Chargers go to Buffalo. Bills take care of business out there. And, these are the games sometimes you question. Could the Bills hold on and win these type of games? Nice win for them, and obviously pulling away in the division.
They are, and the fact is that now that Buffalo's playing, they're getting back to playing defensive football. They've allowed 21 or fewer points in 3 of the past 5 games. They couldn't keep getting into the shootouts they were getting into earlier this year. The rest of their schedule says that they won't have to get into shootout games other than maybe against maybe against the Steelers, but beyond that, they're not going to be able to. So I think this is a trend for them that's really, they're going to win that division and be hard out in the playoffs.
Giants in Cincinnati. Giants obviously fighting tooth and nail. They get the win. They need it. They're in first place in Cincinnati. We know it's been a mess, but the Giants might have some quarterback problems moving forward.
Yeah, they might. The good thing is that they've got a ground game going, and they might be getting more help back in that backfield, so they might be able to lean on that ground game more than they have. But yeah, they're going to need a more at least as good a play as they get out of Jones, because if you're beating the Joe Burrow-less Bengals by only 2 points, that's not a good sign for your future.
Big one here, Tennessee, Indianapolis. The Colts have been playing really well. Right when you start to believe in the Colts and don't believe in Tennessee as much, they reverse the script, and Tennessee wins big, 45-26.
That the Colts could not handle the power running game speaks poorly for them, because you'd think their defense could handle that, and they couldn't. And the Titans usually don't do well in those high-scoring games and shootout games. They did well in this one, and I think it says something for the Colts that they have to play a certain type of game to win, and if you get them out of that type of game, they don't play well, and the Titans got them out of that game.
All right, Carolina, Minnesota. Carolina looked like they were going to win this game, and then at the end, Minnesota sneaks in and takes it. Minnesota, they lose that game to Dallas. If they could have somehow figured out a way to beat the Cowboys, we might be having a different conversation about them.
Definitely, and give credit to Zimmer for getting that team to keep playing hard as they have over the past few weeks, because the beginning of the season when they were going through their struggles, a lot of coaches might have lost their team, and he didn't. And Carolina, it just says, the difference that it would have made if Christian McCaffrey's in that lineup, they have at least 2 more wins if he's there, maybe 3. That's how big of a drop-off it's been without him, and I think that it says something for how close that they are, that they get a little more playing on offense, then they'll be a contender.
Arizona, right when we always want to believe in that team, they go, and then right when we want to give up on the Patriots, they go and do something. 2 teams are really tough to figure out.
Yeah, Murray is also showing that he can't handle the blitz very well. The Patriots had found a weakness, something that he doesn't do very well, and they exploited it, and they really got blitz heavy on him and said, hey, you're going to have to deal with something that you don't usually see. And it says something, because now every team's going to mimic what the Patriots did. But it says that Belichick, he may not have the team that he had the last couple of years, but he's still the best play caller in the league.
Crazy. That might have been the worst loss of the day. I don't know. 49ers beating the Rams. We'll get to that. And Miami, though, they take care of business. They stay within pace of the Bills, and the Jets are horrible.
Jets are atrocious. Their coach is talking about play calling and whether or not he's calling or the other guys complaining, calling the plays. When you score 3 points, I don't know why anybody would want credit for calling the plays, but the Dolphins are winning games that they're supposed to win. And this team, as good as they are now, you give Brian Flores some actual talent, because he's really putting this thing together with baling wire and duct tape. If you give him some real talent, these guys will go somewhere. But I have a feeling the Dolphins will still make the playoffs this year.
Cleveland beats Jacksonville. It's one of those games where, hey, Cleveland, they're 7 wins. They finally get to that 8th win. It wasn't pretty, but they got it done.
They got it done. Again, it's one of those where you needed to get a situation that you get a win like that. They've got the fantastic running game again. Their run blocking is back to where it was earlier this year when they were one of the top teams in the league in that category, and it allows you to win games like this. But Jacksonville, again, when you're Cleveland, though, you go on the road and you only move about 2 points over a Jacksonville team that fires their general manager and is going to fire their head coach and do a house cleaning. I would like to see Cleveland win by more, but they got the win. Give them credit.
New Orleans, this game was a joke. They just smoked Denver. It was pathetic what you watched offensively for the Broncos. I feel bad for that whole situation. I feel bad for the kid who had to play quarterback, really.
Yeah, definitely. It reminds me of something that Dwight White said back when the 76 Steelers played the 76 Buccaneers. Buccaneers, maybe arguably the worst team in NFL history. He said, I'd like to think we would have beaten them if we would have given them our playbook. I think the Saints probably had to feel the same way. As limited as Denver was on offense, we could have mailed you our playbook and said, here you go, take a look, and it wouldn't have mattered. Yeah,
that was pretty bad watching Denver try to move the ball, but they lose 31-3. San Francisco pulls off an upset right when I wanted to believe in the Rams. Man, they disappoint me with that ugly loss against San Francisco at home.
At home, and the thing for the Rams is they've got this fantastic defense, and they've got a good special teams. They've given up a turnover in every single game this year. They've given up 4, 6, 7. They gave up 11 over the past 4 weeks. So they're giving up almost an average of 3 turnovers a week over the past 4 weeks. And their offense, for all the yardage that they get, and they've been very good and very consistent at getting up yards, they're not ever able to get really over the 20. They never get over the 30-point mark since over the last 6 weeks, and they've only got number 27 or more one time in that time frame. So they've got to start turning yards into points, or these kind of games are going to happen.
Kansas City, Tampa, it was kind of a shootout. Kansas City jumped out early. Tampa Bay closes the gap, but something's not right with Tampa Bay.
Yeah, they keep hearing that Brady is trying to run the Patriots offense with the Arians system. And the Arians system, yeah, he's the no risk it, no biscuit guy, and he wants a vertical quarterback, and that's just not what Brady is. Even during his best years, Brady was a certain type of vertical thrower, and that's just not what the Arians offense is. It wants to be aggressive, get downfield all the time, and he's a high percentage guy, and it's just not it's the weakness of that combination is starting to show up.
And then finally, it was all Green Bay. Chicago kind of made it interesting for bettors, I guess, at the end there. But 41-25, that Bears offense, Trubisky's horrendous, and their defense didn't show up either.
And their defense is starting to wear down. I think they were able to hold the team for a while early on, hold up their prospects, but they're really wearing down of late. And you think Nagy is supposed to be this offensive guru, and he can't get it done. But if you don't have a solid quarterback, you're not going to get it done. So the Bears are kind of hitting their ceiling of what they're going to be until they can get better quarterback play, and they're probably just going to have to start over at that position.
All right, by the way, the breaking news earlier, Baltimore-Pittsburgh will not be Tuesday. It will now be Wednesday. So that game has now been moved to Wednesday night. And, of course, it's a very important game in the AFC. So, KC Joyner, before we roll here tonight, who wins and why? Monday night, right here on 97.3 ESPN, Seahawks-Eagles.
I think the Eagles have a couple of paths to victory because if they do run the ball and they get Seattle to run the ball, I think Philadelphia's run defense could keep them in that contest. And, again, they're pretty good at zone blocking. I mean, they're not going to be able to do the creative stuff that we want them to be able to do to get better. But honestly, Seattle's big playability in the passing game, Philadelphia just does not have anywhere close to the ability to match up, and that's such a huge advantage. I got to go with Seattle on this one.
All right, he likes Seattle. By the way, more breaking news just coming in. The Washington football team will play the Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday. So there will be 3 Monday night games next week. A game time has not been set for December the 7th, but it will be a Monday Washington-Pittsburgh game. Of course, Pittsburgh has been moving and all over the place, but they are now moving yet again. Casey's back on Friday with one thought on every Week 13 game. Casey, enjoy the game tonight.
Appreciate it, Mike.